afternoon. I'm Kara Kane, the Executive Director here at the Fishoff National Chamber Music Association. I'm delighted to have 3/4 of Nois, our 2017 silver medalists in the senior wins category at the Fishoff National Chamber Music Competition. We are delighted to have you guys calling in from Chicago and the Chicagoland area. And we are so excited that you guys were doing our Instagram takeover today. We wanted to spend about 30 minutes with you to do a little lunch and learn, to leverage your guys' entrepreneurial spirit, and give some advice to not only this year's winners, but also future competitors that are really looking at how they can create their group as a chamber group, how they can define themselves online, how they can get tours and really, in some ways, not only monetize what they're doing, but also find a way, find their voice and find out how they can become a true chamber group. So today I have Brandon and Jordan and Janos. Would you guys just start by introducing yourselves very quickly so that we can meet each of you?
Yeah, sure. My name is Brandon Quarles, and I live in Chicago, Illinois, in Rogers Park, in the neighborhood of Rogers Park. And I guess the quick background was I met all these guys at Northwestern University, where we were all graduate students at the time. And I'm wrapping up my doctorate there now, and also am the lecturer of classical saxophone at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. So it's a lot of fun stuff. And I'm originally from Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's where I'm originally from.
Great. And my name's Jordan. Like Brandon said, met all these guys at Northwestern during my master's. Before my time at Northwestern, I did my undergrad at Michigan State University, and I'm actually from the East Lansing area, born and raised in Okemos, Michigan. And beyond that, currently I'm the associate instructor of classical saxophone at the University of Illinois, Chicago. And I also, in not coronavirus times, I'm a manager at a music venue here in Evanston, Illinois called Evanston Space.
And I'm Janos. I'm the baritone sax player of the group. I did my undergrad in California at University of the Pacific in Stockton. And I'm from Auburn, California, around the Sacramento area. I did my master's degree at Northwestern. That's where I met the rest of these fine fellows. And graduated in 2018, and currently, similar to Jordan, before the pandemic struck, I was working as a stage manager at a couple of different venues in town, at Northwestern and at for the Music Institute of Chicago. Now I'm just teaching privately online and for Ravinia.
Well, I know you guys were founded in 2016, as you said, at Northwestern. You came to us in 2017 and then returned later actually to be our featured artist at our gala. I believe that was when the fire alarm went off. Hopefully it was not in the middle of your performance and everyone had to vacate.
Yeah, it wasn't in the middle. Was it before we played, guys? Do you remember? I think it was before, right?
Yeah, I think it was during dinner, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was during the dinner.
I wasn't sure if that was actually part of your repertoire.
Yeah, it's part of our whole stage show. Really, it's a big smoke and mirrors kind of thing. We get you to go outside, and you're all upset about that. That when we play, it's amazing. It will always make you feel better.
Works every time.
Well, talk to us a little bit about your 2017 experience at Fishoff and sort of how where that falls in the narrative of you guys coming together as an ensemble.
Yeah, it's really cool because we were founded in 2016 in late September is when Northwestern starts school. They start really late. And so we had just gotten together and we had decided to do this group. And, we wanted to do some competitions. So we knew that would be part of our experience to gain all that we could from doing these wonderful things. The wild thing is we picked one right in the Chicago area called the Chicago Woodwind Ensemble competition to do, and it was 3 weeks from when we had started playing together, period. So that was sort of one of those things we had to kick it into high gear really quickly. And we were fortunate enough to win that, and that gave us a little bit of cash and a little bit of, what's the word I want? Confidence to keep going and doing some more stuff. So I had Fishoff, we had all been fans and followers for a long time. All of my teachers are Fishoff alum, actually. Even my high school teacher, he didn't medal, I think, but they went. I found out this much later. I was like, man, you didn't tell me that at all. So it was one of those things we knew we wanted to do. And interestingly enough, we had gone to another competition down in Texas. And while we did that, we went on a short little tour of about a week and played a lot. And I think it was while we were driving back, or at least the day we got back or something like that, when we found out that we had been accepted to come and actually be a part of the live rounds of Fishoff. So this was all within our first year of playing together. So it was certainly really exciting, but it was also, I mean, I was nervous. Maybe I won't speak for everybody, but it was just like, okay, like we're really doing this for real. So it was a lot of fun. And so that was the Fishoff competition for us, was right at the very tail end of our first year of playing together.
Yeah, I know the Prism Quartet was who some of your teachers were part of. They were also silver medalists in 1989. So you are part of an illustrious group of silver medalists. I know on your guys' website you applaud that and you embrace that. And you know, I just finished watching The Last Dance. Scottie Pippen was #2, and he was pretty impressive. So you guys are in a great crowd. So maybe you guys can talk a little bit about, once you guys found out, well, while you were preparing for Fishoff, you went with pretty standard repertoire, I think. I think I was looking at, you did an Albright piece and some other things, where now you guys have moved in a little bit different direction. I know in particular, you guys are looking for ways to expand and develop the saxophone quartet repertoire. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that trajectory of moving from being at Fishoff, doing more standard stuff, to where you've gone now, several years out.
I can talk on this for a little bit. I think you know, as the group has progressed, I think we've naturally come in contact with and met lots more composers and performers as we've gone over the course of these last 4 years. And I think in our first year as an ensemble, we were really focused on, like, we want to create like a really solid foundation and a really solid group sound. And so I believe the pieces we played for Fishoff, we did the Albright Fantasy Etudes, we did a piece by David Ludwig, we did a piece for 4 soprano saxophones called Mysterious Morning, and Schumann transcription. And, you know, these were pieces that we all chose partially also because they were really working into the trajectory of the group, as, I don't want to say pedagogical pieces, but in a way, like, you know, the Schumann was something we were really working on to make sure that we blended our sound together. And that Albright quartet, while it is standard, is really like kind of like a jumping off point for a lot of the music that we're playing today. And so I think during that first year, we were just kind of working on establishing our group identity and our group sound. And from there, as we moved forward, we met more composers, and commissioning was always something that we wanted to be a central aspect of the group. But writing pieces of music takes time. So actually we gave the first premiere, the Nois's first ever premiere came about 4 weeks after the Fishoff competition. And since then we've done 35 premieres thereabouts in the past 3 years. And I think that part of the programming choices from that too was just like some of the music that we were playing today just, you know, hadn't been written yet. A lot of our standard pieces of the Nois repertoire didn't even exist at the time that we were doing Fishoff, which is cool to see how far we've come since then. But I think that's kind of sort of the reasoning. I don't know if anybody else has anything they'd like to add.
Well, maybe you can talk a little bit about Fishoff, and it sounds like you guys were really focused then on building your blend, figuring out how you played together, what your sound was like. Maybe you could talk about how that evolved, both preparing for it and then afterwards.
I think naturally, like you're suggesting, just preparing for a competition is such a great way to sort of quickly coalesce your sounds together, so to say, and get to know each other as a chamber group, both musically and personally. And we still go around when we go around to universities and such, and we'll give sort of presentations about entrepreneurship and talk about how we have been able to be successful in our field, and how we recommend other younger chamber groups can pursue success. We always mention that, like having some sort of goal to start out your chamber group with. And for us, that was the competition, but I'm sure it can take many different forms, you know, maybe a festival, or you could even start with recording some sort of album or project like that. And so for us, preparing for the Fish Off and the hours and hours of work that went into that, which I don't know about the other guys, but for me, that was my first time preparing for a competition so serious in a chamber setting. I had been in some chamber groups before, but we had never really done any serious competitions. So it was a huge jump, and just that amount of playing together just really quickly makes you a better musician, and especially a better chamber musician. And it was, I think, it really sort of kickstarted the whole thing.
So did you guys have intentions beyond? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jordan.
Oh, I was just gonna quickly add too. I think that every skill that we learned and worked on through playing that Schumann transcription or Albright or things like that directly translates to even the weirdest of the weird music that we're playing today. You know, you can't play a quarter tone in tune with another person playing a quarter tone if you don't know how to tune your major third. And I think that those skills are really transferable, and the foundation is what led also to us playing the different types of music we do today.
Now, when you guys were preparing for Fish Off, did you have an intent of what was going to be on Fish Off, or were you really just focused on, we're going to put this together as a group, we love playing with each other?
Yeah, I think it's hard to remember, and maybe you can fill me in, the other buddy, if I forget something. But like I think that we certainly thought from the beginning, like, that we knew we wanted this to be something unique and different. And we had all been in different kinds of chamber music situations before, some very serious, some doing like high level competitions at playing, like you know, I was just saying. I mean, certainly he started out as a fantastic chamber player. I don't want it to sound in any way that way, but you know, like you just said, you had not played in many groups at that time. But we knew one thing was that we didn't want to do competitions and stop, or that sort of be the end of the story. Even if it was just like maybe one more thing past that, it was just we had seen a lot of great groups, I guess, sort of reach these really amazing heights, and then, you know, sort of for many different reasons, we never get to hear them again, which is always kind of a drag. So we wanted to do something a little bit beyond that and try to find our own place in saxophone quartet land, which to some listeners who aren't saxophone quartet people, you may be surprised to hear that's a place, but it's it's certainly sort of an identifiable thing on the map in our little niche corner of the world. But you know, we wanted from the very beginning to find our own voice and some way that we could uniquely express ourselves in that medium and make a new kind of path.
And for us, that sort of has taken the shape of like a lot of experimental improvisation in particular, and just experimentation in general, and being really sort of embracing the collaborative process with composers, and just the willingness to try stuff even if we think it's not going to work. Just wanted to add that on.
Yeah, and what would you guys describe as your aha moment, right? So when you guys decided that you really wanted to do this, one thing I find really interesting is you go to your website and each one of you has a role. You know, Brandon, you're the executive director. Jordan, you're the director of operations and social media. And Janos, you are the director of finance. And so you guys have really codified this in a way of, this is a business, this is what you're doing. And so at what point did it move from finding our voice and collaborating? I know many of the composers on this album were friends and colleagues of yours at Northwestern. This is a hometown album, sort of a homage to Chicago and the power of Chicago musicians and creative thinkers. But when did that aha moment really happen for you guys, or has it just evolved?
I think it's sort of both. I think it definitely is sort of a natural progression, but I do sort of distinctly remember a moment where things suddenly shifted from, oh, we're just kind of four people just trying to do what we were doing as best as we can to, okay, this is going to become a serious business, and we now need to start building this foundation in order to let this thrive. And for me, that was a meeting we had with perhaps our most influential mentor on the business side of things, an amazing man named John Beerbussy here in Chicago. John Beerbussy is he's on the board for Third Coast Percussion, another amazing chamber ensemble that we really look up to here in the Chicago area. There's quite a few groups here in Chicago that we're very close with and have been great mentors for us, including Eighth Blackbird and Spectral String Quartet, among others. But particularly John, he came to our first show that we played here in Chicago at Constellation. And he approached us afterwards and said, wow, love how you guys sound. Do you want to meet sometime just so we can, just talk, kind of? We didn't really have any specific agenda. And it was sort of at that meeting where he really, naturally being on the board for a big organization, a big thriving chamber group like Third Coast, he had a lot of wonderful advice to give on the business side of things. And that's where we started to really talk about, okay, what kind of roles can we take, each one of us, so that we can start pushing this far forward. So for me, if I had to define like sort of one moment, that's where things sort of took a turn for me. But the other guys might have some different answers.
I 100% agree with what Janos said. Like John Beerbussy changed all of our lives in that meeting just by coming to that show at Constellation. And I remember we met at Who's Your Mama Pie restaurant in Evanston, Illinois. And he sat down with us and was like, what's your business plan? And we were like, we play music. And then I remember him leaving, and he talked us through what like Third Coast's business plan was. And we were like sitting in Who's Your Mama, and we were like, okay, well, like, Janos, like, you're the best at saving money. So, Third Coast has a director of finance, so you're going to be our director of finance. And like, Brandon, you're really good at sending important emails. So like you be the executive director, and like Jordan, you just love reaching out to people about gigs. You can be the director of operations. And like, Hunter, you're the friendliest person in the world. You should definitely be our fundraiser. And we walked out of the end of like John left, and we sat at Who's Your Mama for like another hour, and we're like, okay. And it just so happened that the roles that he had told us about in Third Coast Percussion fit with our identities individually within the group, which we were fortunate that it happened. That won't be the way for every group. But we just happened to have skill sets each individually that aligned with that. And so, yeah, that day for sure was I think a major turning point on the business side of things for Nois.
And that was in 2018. That was in 2018.
Yeah,
that happened.
That meeting was probably, that show that we did was in November of 2017 that he came to, and I don't know how long it took us to get coffee, but it probably wasn't too long. It's probably in December, maybe. If it was after the new year, it could have been 18, but.
So you guys had already been doing some touring and gigs as an ensemble. How did this meeting sort of change your future bookings? Was there any difference after you sort of created these roles? And
Totally, yeah. I mean, I think everybody needs somebody. Everybody needs a John Beerbussy in their life. I think somebody who will just sort of say like, "Hey, I like what you do, and I think that you can do it really well. You just need," like his sort of mantra to us always was like, "Your art is here." I have something in my hand. Your art is here, but like your money situation is like down here. Like you got to get the funds to be able to support your art, so that you can sort of keep making better art, And just he was always just like, yeah, just relentlessly pursue the things that you want to do. So I think it was not long after that. I would love to know when we started planning this tour, but we sort of looked at the calendar that we had. We were all, this is the second year of my master's, right? Or, oh no, first year of my doctorate.
Oh.
When did we go on that big? Yeah.
That was
year two for you guys.
Yeah.
So, but this was 2018, right? Man, this is like wild. Like we're getting old. Yeah. This is crazy. It's like, it used to feel so not that long ago. But what we decided was we were looking at the calendar because we were still in school, and we knew we wanted to tour. And we had a lot of. I am originally from the Southeast, and and Jordan also has a lot of connections down there. And Hunter also went to school at the North Carolina School of the Arts, so we were like, okay, we know a lot of people down there. Let's get out of the Chicago winter in March, and let's go on a tour. And we kind of looked at the time, at the schedule, at the calendar, and we were like, well, okay, like we have our spring break. It's kind of like 2 weeks, so maybe we can make that off. And if they would let us go, we could probably get the week before that off, and maybe even the week after that, because Northwestern's on a quarter system, so we really wouldn't miss that many class periods. And I remember very jokingly being like, I mean, it's not like we're going to be on tour for 5 weeks. And then it happened like that because we started booking the shows, and Jordan and I took it on ourselves to just write a bunch of emails to a lot of basically every professor of saxophone in the Southeast region, and worked on routing. You remember when we went to the Northwestern Library because we needed a big enough space. I think we even checked out maps, which we didn't end up using. But
Yeah, we
I think
checked out big atlases.
Yeah, or we just projected something on the wall, and we were drawing the routing situation on this wall and trying to plan it out. And then luckily over time, it took us a long time to book that. But it became a 5-week tour, which was pretty nuts.
And Brandon, let me hop in here too. I think the first thing that really kicked off that 5-week tour, how we first started thinking of it as a possibility, was because of competitions. So we looked at the first week of the tour was the NASA saxophone competition. Halfway through the tour was the finals of the MTNA chamber music competition, and then the Chesapeake Bay competition was right at the end of the 5-week tour. And we were like, oh man, this is awesome. We can just like go straight through and just like play gigs in between these competitions, and it'll really fill out the tour. And then we didn't make it out of the state round of MTNA, and then we didn't make it into the finals of the Chesapeake Bay competition, and really only made it into the NASA competition, but we had already booked all these gigs. And so it ended up just being a tour instead of a tour around competitions, which like honestly was probably significantly, like maybe not significantly better, but like definitely boosted our resume in a pretty serious way, even without the aid of like those 2 competitions that we thought we might get into.
And just the skill alone of being able to manage that, you know what I mean? It was like, it showed us that we're like, okay, like we did that. That's pretty crazy. And it made us artistically so much tighter. I remember coming back, we had a performance back home in Chicago after that was all over, and a friend of mine pulling me aside after watching us play and just going like, what happened out there? Like, I mean, you guys were good, but like literally what did you do? And we just said, well, we played a show every night pretty much, and that just forced us to get even better than we already were.
Wow. Now, what was your pitch when you're emailing these universities and saxophone studios?
It's just super relatable as we're talking to Fishoff right now, but every email started with, hi, my name is Jordan Muloff. I'm the director of operations for Nois, with a fancy hyperlink to our website on the name Nois. And then it says, we're planning a tour for March through the southern United States, and we would love to play a show and maybe give a masterclass at your university. A little bit about the ensemble. Well, we recently were awarded the silver medal in the Fishoff chamber music competition, and first prize in the Chicago area women's competition. Here's a little information about the music that we're going to be playing on tour. We're featuring the music of Chicago-based composers. Looking forward to talking more about this, Jordan. And so really like the central part of all those emails for us was this like kind of like stamp of approval from Fishoff. It's really easy to be like, oh yeah, I sound great. You should definitely hire me. But it's a lot easier to say, hey, I sound great. And this really, really important competition also says that we sound great. So you should hire us, so that I think that in and of itself, like really helped propel that tour forward.
So that was your first tour.
Mm-hmm.
What were session number 2, actually?
That was your second tour?
We had gone before Fishoff on a week-long stint through Kansas City and Texas and Arkansas and Oklahoma.
So what would you say now? How many tours have you done? I think you guys have been in 20 states over the total, but and maybe you don't have to name how many tours, but how would you say that each tour subsequently you've walked away with lessons learned. What would some of those lessons learned be as you've done more than one tour?
I think countless lessons learned. You know, the 5-week tour, that was the only time we were actually able to fully pull off something that long and extensive for various reasons. Mainly the reasons being like, now we all have jobs, and it's harder to leave for 5 weeks. And I think we found out too, like on the 5-week tour, like it was great, but we could be, you know, just as effective out for 3 weeks or for 2 weeks. So that's one thing that we learned. Subsequent tours as well, I think we learned that you can have really rewarding experiences and really like fiscally lucrative experiences on even just like one-off gigs, or like a short like 3-day tour to an area of the country where you don't have to be out on the road for 5 weeks. It's possible to also make money and have performances just in like short little bursts if you're conscious about, you know, making sure you book gigs in similar areas. And I think that's the other thing that I've learned too. Our most recent tour actually happened right before the like nation shut down in March, and we were on the road for 3 weeks in LA and Arizona before that. And in that tour, we had just booked off a set amount of time. And what I really learned about that is just like, that really drove home like the success rate of emails for an area, because I probably sent 3 times the emails for the gigs that we got. And also what I learned too, we were keeping score, is the more shows you start playing, the more money you start making at shows, the more complicated your tech setup becomes for pieces that you're playing, the more emails and time it goes into booking a tour. I think the record on the tour was, I was counting an email thread, and for one gig we had 130 emails back and forth setting it up between our organization and them. And I would say the average from first ask to performance for each gig on that LA tour was 70 emails back and forth. So I think I'm just learning as we go, like just the amount of, you know, work and attention to detail things become as, you know, we go further into our career.
Wow.
Yeah, I
And
think it's really bad. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Oh, I was just going to add like 2 things. Number one, I was sort of start talking about sort of the streamlining of the.
Brandon, you're a robot.
Oh, great.
You sound like a robot.
Sorry.
Sometimes my my audio interface doesn't like to behave, and it gets really strange. Anyway, what I was trying to say before I became a cyborg was that, speaking of tech, like realizing that there are things that you kind of forget about if you don't think ahead. Like this was, you haven't got to this yet, but there was on sort of our sheet, it was like a favorite fish off of memory. And I think this is like so indicative of where we've come from, guys, where we were like really, really packed up, ready to go to fish off. And, you know, you have these lovely soirees that you do for folks, and you have us perform, and those were great. And we were driving there. That was the first thing we were going to do. We were going to drive in and play this soiree at this whiskey bar somewhere in South Bend. I forget. It's like in John Dillinger's bank vault or something. But anyway, so we were going there, and I literally remember we literally crossed the South Bend city limit, and it hit me that you had told us to bring stands, and we brought 0 stands. So we immediately, you know, and we're like, of course the whiskey bar doesn't have stands. So we were like, found the local South Bend music shop, which I don't even remember, called them up, and luckily they had 4 pretty sturdy music stands that we still use to this day.
I have one right next to me right now, the same shop. Yeah, it's right next to me. So
it was just one of those like, wow, okay, yeah, that was like a policy, you know, you just have to advance the stands, or there's just things that you maybe assume are going to be there. You just can't assume anything is one of the kind of lessons. And then the other one, just being on the artistic side of things, that tour in many ways taught us, this is like a very cheesy and cliche lesson, but you should just be yourself on stage. Like we had started off trying to sort of be academic and sort of like it just wasn't us. And I remember very clearly, it was East Tennessee State University, where we had just come off a gig where like the audience, it was a good gig, but it was just kind of like meh. And we're like, okay, let's just you just go out there and literally, if whatever you want to say it, and, or you know, and or tell a joke or just be a person. And that gig was the best gig I think we had the whole time in terms of it was fun and people had a good time, and that's what we've tried to do every time since then. It's just be ourselves and really try to just actually connect with the audience rather than just be there to do something outside of that.
Well, it's certainly reflected in your guys' website. And maybe before I segue into talking a little bit about your debut album, which recently came out the last Friday of June, you could talk a little bit of what percentage of time are you now spending on administrative work versus actually playing your instruments, practicing, performing?
Well, at the moment, it's very different just because of the pandemic, right? So we're not we haven't rehearsed together in what? I mean, when was the last time we played together? Probably March or something. It's been a long time.
Yeah, we got back on March 11th.
Yeah, so it's been a while since we've been playing together. But if we sort of take the time period before that, I would say it was, I don't know, maybe 50-50 sort of roughly, like administrative and business stuff. So naturally, like as a chamber group, we started with mostly rehearsal time. And if we really needed to talk about stuff, that didn't come until later into our career. But we started organizing sort of weekly meetings, or we would say, okay, let's extend an hour forward of rehearsal. We're gonna use that hour before to do business meeting stuff. So it'll probably change in the future too. I suspect it will lean more on the administrative side as we continue to go, because for anyone out there listening, I think the administrative side of things is even more important than the musical side, right? Like you can sit in a rehearsal room rehearsing for 12 hours a day and it won't matter if you don't reach out to the people. So, and that's what the administrative side of things is all about. It's about being able to generate money so that we can continue to do what we do and provide the art that we provide. So, but yeah, maybe 50-50 if I had to break it down.
Yeah, and also, I was just gonna say, it's like the administrative side is difficult as well, because we're really learning how we go. Like all of us have had 6+ years of schooling of how to play our instruments and how to play chamber music, but no one ever taught me how to send an email to get a gig. And so that's a lot of the administrative side, at least where we are now, is just like kind of figuring it out as we go and learning from past experiences. Whereas like if we all had music business degrees, like who knows, like maybe it would be a different proportion. I suspect not, but we you never know.
Well, I know you guys have had a lot of luck because you had this mentor in John. Were there any mentors on the other side, either sales or social media, that you've leveraged, or is it all really just trial and error, self-taught?
In a lot of ways, I think we owe a great debt to certainly all of our teachers who always challenged us to think very entrepreneurially. At least on my end, for me personally, I went to the University of Georgia for my undergrad, where Dr. Connie Frigo teaches the saxophone, and she, for a long time, has been doing like consultations even with business owners about like how artists think about stuff. They're like these amazing connections between art and business. So that was like, it was just part of like my thing. That was just like how it worked. And I grew up playing in like rock and pop bands as a kid, so it was just kind of how it worked for me. But we've benefited so much from the Chicago community of artists here, starting, with Eighth Blackbird, who also Fishoff alum, who took it. Oh wow! Sorry, I'm about to make a really bad pun. Took us under their wing to. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. But we were lucky to go to what they had at the time, which was the Eighth Blackbird Creative Lab in Ojai, California. And that was one of those like aha moments, I think, at least for me, I think we all kind of had there, where it was just sort of a recommitting or a doubling down on like, okay, we're going to do this. Like, and they showed us, well, often, I mean, they did show us a lot of like specific things, but it was more about sort of the ethos of being a professional chamber ensemble. Like, here are the kind of things you need to think about and have your core values, how you're going to operate, what your unique place in the music sphere is. And then we also, other Chicago here is the Third Coast Percussion, who are just amazing fellow Northwestern grads. And we're always meeting with all of sort of coffee to talk about our respective issues, and then the Spectral String Quartet too. Many times, I remember the very early days, we actually, all four of us at some point were interns for Spectral Quartet. And I think in looking at when I designed our website, we looked at them in a lot of ways for an ensemble that really has their identity and brand very concretely expressed in digital land. So, and it was just like a direct model. And we just did a lot of modeling. I think that's kind of always been, at least my mantra. It's just like, okay, let me see how a successful group is doing that thing, and let me figure out the way that I can do that feels good for me.
Well, I think your guys' album is very telling of your ethos and your personality. I mean, every bit of it, from it being a Chicago-based, based obviously in Chicago composers, even what you guys were doing with your pre-sales. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how your true identity has manifested itself in the creation of this album.
I can start, and then the other guys can tag on. But when we had our very first concert that we mentioned at Constellation, or at least our very first Chicago kind of coming out concert, Constellation, for those who don't know, is like the hub club for new music in our city. It's like every time that it's like, speaking about it now, it makes me really sad because it's right now, we can't go there, but it's like every time I went there, it was like a family thing. You'd see the same people, and often new people. I mean, depending on the show, there would be different communities kind of coming together. And when we played that concert, we wanted to play an all hometown composers concert. We had 3 pieces by our friends and 2 by people that we really looked up to. And the reception we got from that concert, and the warmth and like the love in the room there, was like, man, okay, this is like really a special thing, a special place. And when it came time to make our first album, I didn't really remember us even having other ideas about what it might be like. It was just like, yeah, let's just do that, and sort of have, if a debut album is going to be anything about sort of announcing who you are and what you're doing, let's have our friends and our city kind of with us in that and be in that space. So when it came time for us to do that, yeah, it was sort of clear how we wanted to express that. And, the other guys can sort of tag on too if you have any sort of additional things to say, but it seemed like a no-brainer.
Well, I do know that for your pre-sales, you guys had identified the Brave Space Alliance. Maybe you could talk a little bit about this organization and how you chose it to have contributions from this album go towards.
Yeah, of course. Happy to. So what we did with the pre-sales is we took the 100% of our proceeds from the pre-sale sales, and then also the main platform we're selling on is Bandcamp, which is a great platform for artists. And on the first Friday of every month since the pandemic, they've been doing a thing called Bandcamp Friday, where they waive 100% of their fees and give all of the money to artists. So we took 100% of the proceeds from pre-sales, and then also from that Bandcamp Friday to donate to Brave Space Alliance. And a little about the organization, Brave Space Alliance. They're an organization here in Chicago. They're actually the first Black-led, trans-led LGBTQ center on the south side of Chicago. And what they do is they provide resources, programmings, and services by the LGBTQ community for the LGBTQ community, but specifically focused on like the south and the west sides of the city. And from the beginning of the pandemic, they used their resources and their building, like their brick and mortar operations, to collect and distribute food and paper products and toiletries back into the Black and LGBTQ communities across Chicago's like metro area, but specifically the south and west side. And between the pre-sales for Nois and the Bandcamp Friday revenues, we were actually able to raise around $800 to contribute to the needs of the organization, which, I think is, we're really grateful for everybody's generosity in the pre-orders and on that Bandcamp Friday. And a little bit about like why we did it. as our country has been having like these long needed conversations about race in our country after the murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and Ahmaud Arbery, countless others, we all sat down and talked to each other about what we can do to make our organization be more actively anti-racist. And through that conversation, we realized that while a commitment to diversity and inclusion has always been at the forefront of our thoughts, we're actually doing like not a great job at supporting the work of Black composers. And so this donation to Brave Space is the first of like many steps that we're taking as an organization to ensure that all of our artistic activities from this point on forward, including programming, commissioning, things like that, align with our personal and political beliefs.
Great. Well, I know we all are having those conversations and looking for ways to do that. So thank you guys for sharing that. I'd love to end with you guys just talking, each one of you, this is your debut album, Is This Noise? It's available on Spotify, through Bandcamp. I'm sure there are other channels as well. We're so appreciative that you guys took time to let us get to see what you've been up to since you've been here in South Bend at our gala. And I'd love to just hear, maybe each one of you has a favorite moment or a favorite segment from either making your album or a piece that you could recommend that will inform us. I was having my kids listen to one of the pieces, and my 11-year-old daughter made a comment, which I think is a great compliment to you guys. She said, "Wow, this is weird. I really like it." So it was a very cool experience for them to hear what you guys have been up to. But for those of us that are listening to it for the first time, maybe you can give us tips on how to inform us to listen, or what some of your favorite parts were in creating this album.
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, number one, I always really love child reactions to anything music related, because in so many ways, children just get it. I mean, and I'm not saying that like they have some secret knowledge, but it's that they just come at it with no preconceived notions, you know what I mean? And just say what they feel, which I think is great. Like often as adults, we try to be too cool, or we try to know stuff, but kids just like, yeah, that sounds cool or weird or strange or pretty, or I like it, or I don't, or what have you. And that's great. So I try to do that more in my own listening as much as I can. But I think, oh man, it's tough. I mean, we recorded this over 3 days in early September of 2018. And we did it out at Northern Illinois University, actually, where our engineer and my co-producer, Dan Nichols, he teaches out there at NIU, audio engineering and stuff. And so they were gracious enough to let us use the hall there. They have a very lovely performance space that we, maybe this is my thing. It was an interesting environment to be in, where I recorded when I was a kid, plenty of like rock and pop kind of things, like at little studios. So I knew the studio was like that thing, but like sort of on location recording in this concert hall in which they, Dan had blacked out like the lights, and we only existed like on the stage backwards, because that's the way to get the good sound out there, is we didn't play towards where the audience plays, we played towards the back of the room. And under these like it seemed to me like Darth Vader chamber like LED lights, you know what I mean? Like where you're just sort of enveloped in these sort of lights that are just around you, because they're noiseless, so they're not going to pick up the microphones are going to pick them up. And we did have Dan is a genius in the sense of his audio wizardry, because we had like 27 microphones on us all the time. Yeah, it's a lot. And I think one of the things that I'm most proud of about the album is that the pieces are all amazing. And what Dan did was allow you to get inside the sound of the group in a way that I haven't heard a lot of saxophone albums do before. That it just feels, this one, our kind of sound concept was very much live in the room with the sounds, particularly because the sounds are also strange or so different. Like the album really is, there's rarely a time where we play in a conventional manner, and there's very rarely a piece in which we play in the sort of conventional setup of soprano, alto, tenor, baritone. There's only 2 pieces on the album that use that configuration. Some of them are all alto pieces. One of them's all 4 detuned soprano saxophones, which is wild. And so I think if you go into the album with the idea that you're going to hear saxophones in a way that you have never heard them before, I think you'll be off to a good start, and just sort of allow the sounds to kind of get around you and just kind of feel it. And I think that recording it was just was a good time. I mean, you know, as people who have recorded stuff know, it's a lot of work. They're long days. They were 10 to 10 kind of days with the lunch and the dinner break. But, you know, every day you were able to go to the hotel and feel like you did something really cool. And now that you have it in your hands, like, that's probably the best thing. It's just like, it's there. We did it. It's like, it's a disc. It's cool. So that's kind of my thought.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what Brandon said. I mean, I've got a copy of the disc here, and I think like maybe one of the coolest parts for me is just that this actually exists. I have to be like probably one of the last 10 people in the world that collects CDs. But actually, I don't think you can see it, but over there, I got a huge rack of CDs here in my room. And I think like when these CDs came in, I know they got shipped to Hunter, who's not here. And I was at his house that night, and I was like, Hunter, give me my copies of the CD. And I think it's cool to have something tangible, at least for me, that's like a representation of things, particularly when it took so much work and effort to go into it. And I think my suggestion for like a listener experience is like, it's hard to pick a favorite piece on the album. I really don't think I can. We've played them all so much that like the favorites, they come, they go, they change, also based on just like how well you played that night, you know, like, but I think the thing that stands out to me the most is what Brandon was referencing about the sound. And I have never, like Brandon said, heard an album that sounds quite like this. And I think the best way for a listener to experience it is through like your best pair of headphones. Speakers could work too, but I know for me, when I sit down and I listen to this album in the editing process, and then also once it came in, like you get the headphones in, and it's a pretty amazing experience because Dan's done such a great job pinpointing like where the sounds come from on like the different sides of your headphones. And I really feel like I'm being enveloped by the sound of this saxophone quartet. And so many of the pieces aren't about like faster, higher, louder. So many of the pieces are just about vibe and sitting and like listening to this texture happen. And I think that's the favorite thing for me, is just like when I listen to this, just like sitting down and like really maybe not even necessarily trying to pick out like melodic phrases or things like that, but just like letting the texture overwhelm my auditory senses.
I don't think I have too much to add. I think the only thing I would say is just, walk into it or listen to it, and you're, I think, more than welcome not to like it or to like it and any parts of it thereof. I think it's interesting. But there was a review actually posted of our CD, which surprised, I think, all of us by it was in Spanish, so I couldn't understand it, but I sent it to my sister since she speaks Spanish, to translate it, and she mentioned that the reviewer commented on how sometimes it doesn't even sound like we're playing saxophones. It sounds like we're playing cellos or flutes or something like that. So I think that's sort of something particularly interesting to listen for. Maybe just forget that you're listening to a saxophone album, but otherwise I don't think there's really a wrong way to listen to it. Just we hope you enjoy, and if you don't enjoy, that's okay too.
Well, thank you guys. I'm going to end with one last question. What's next for you guys? I mean, I know this COVID is uncertain, but what do you guys have in store for you?
Well, I'm really looking forward to getting a haircut.
Yeah, that would be nice, right? I used to have really long hair, and I'm afraid that I'm actually going to get there again. You know what I mean? Like, it would be kind of crazy. But we'll do that when it's safe. But we are, one of the interesting things is, while we were, over the last 2 years, since we made the first album, we have been slowly recording more material towards our second album. And while we are, this whole situation actually ended up putting kind of a stop to what was going to be probably like the final session, or at least one of the final sessions for those. We were working on it in New York actually, with our good friend Mike Tierney, who lives in Brooklyn and has a great studio there. And so we're really looking forward to that. Like actually now that we have some time after getting this one done, we can kind of go back to those recordings and start to edit them and mix them and sort of get them kind of ready to go. So that'll be a lot of fun. And we're working on, right now we're working on some options for remote activities that we can possibly do with universities, recognizing that a lot of learning is happening in that space now. And that's one of the favorite parts of what we get to do is traveling around and working with students on certainly the musical side of things, but also a lot of these entrepreneur type issues. And we're looking at how we can translate some of the things that we usually do in person into a remote spot. So that's pretty exciting, and I think one of the things that at least I'm trying to stay somewhat positive about it all and realizing that we've always tried new things in the group like this. Whenever album 2 comes out, we know that the fun part is it'll almost probably be about a 180-degree stylistic shift, which is pretty fun for us and that's just kind of how we roll with our shows. But I think in this time we're going to find some ways to be creative in the ways that we can be, and I don't know what they are yet, but I know it's going to be cool. Whatever they're going to be, we'll figure something out that would be really interesting. So there's a lot of cool projects on the horizon, some recording stuff, some remote learning type situations, and hopefully some shows in the spring, which we hope to be able once it's all safe again.
Great. Well, we're excited to see what's next based upon how innovative you've been musically and on social media. I have no doubt that you will come up with some really interesting things. I do have one last question for János. During this time, have you sped up your Rubik's Cube time? What are you down to? How many seconds?
That's a great question, and you know me so well. I've got it right here. I think I've sped it up by maybe a second, but much like when I practice saxophone, right now I'm doing a lot of untimed solves, slow solves, so that I can really work on my technique and looking ahead. So I average between 17 and 20 seconds. And hopefully when I start retiming myself again, I'm hoping it'll be in like the 16 to 19 range. Small improvements.
Man.
You have to put that on the takeover tomorrow for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Give the
Oh
people
my
a little taste. Or Friday.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Or today.
Well,
I mean,
today.
Yes, you may have already seen it. But we're delighted that, although make sure that nobody pulls out your Rubik's Cubes or takes the stickers off and reorders them, so you can't do it. Which one of
See,
this?
the nice one about mine is that it's actually stickerless, so can't cheat with this one.
Yes. Yeah, I was the kid that would start popping them out and putting them back together.
It's a good strategy.
Oh, man. Well, you guys, thank you so much. We appreciate getting to talk to you as a group. We're so delighted that we get to know you a little bit more individually as well on our Instagram takeover. And as I said, we look forward to seeing what amazing things you're going to be doing in the future. And it was always a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks
One last thing is just Fishoff has always been so kind to us, and it was still, we talk about one of the greatest experiences of our lives. Maybe that's over. I mean, I don't think it's exaggerating at all. It was amazing, and the way that this organization is run and the quality to which the competition holds itself and the way in which it treats the artists who come there, I think is just, above and beyond what we've seen in many different places. And I mean, we've done, many other groups have been amazing too, but Fishoff's a very special thing. And we're just really happy and honored to have been a part of it. So thanks.
Thank you. Well, Fishoff is special because of all the great musicians that are there and that take us as part of their journey. So thank you, guys.